So now you're allowed to bolt on a super las cannon to your Rhino chassis for just 10 points. Let's talk about the Hunter, the Space Marine anti-air platform that also does quite a good job of anti-ground. Hello again and welcome to another Auspex Tactics video, the tactics focused 40k channel where we're continuing our look at the new Space Marine Codex and the units that are contained within. This week is Tank Week, so we're covering the various tracked vehicles available to the Adeptus Astartes. And to kick it off, we're starting with one of my favourite new picks from the Codex, which is the Hunter. Now this thing's been around for a couple of editions now, and it's never really been particularly good in the rules, suffering from single shot syndrome and not being overly amazing at the one thing it was good at doing, which is shooting down flying targets. However, now with its new rules it's received a hefty point drop and is a very tough little tank that can sit at the back shooting out enormous missiles at the opponent all game long. In this video we'll go over the Hunter's stats and rules for its big gun, any combos that we can see in the new Space Marine Codex, and how to use it on the tabletop. Now in the background, the Hunter is the primary anti-air weapon of the Adeptus Astartes. Its Sky Sphere missile launcher is very unusual indeed, in that each missile contains the mummified brain of a chapter serf who is very happy to guide the missile towards an enemy aircraft as a last act of self-sacrifice. That's incredibly dark. But apparently it's quite effective in that if the missile misses its initial target, it can turn around and come back for another go. The Hunter is a heavy support choice for Codex Space Marines, and will cost you 75 points with no upgrades. On its top profile it has a movement of 10, weapon skill of 6 up, ballistic skill of 3 up, strength 6, toughness 8, which is very good for similar sized tanks of this type, wounds 11, attacks 3, leadership 8, and a 3 up save. When it degrades, its ballistic skill gets worse from 3 to 4 to 5, and its movement drops from 10 to 5 to 3. It starts degrading when it is 5 wounds or less. As a base model, it's only equipped with its Sky Spear missile launcher, which is a very nasty weapon indeed. It's 60-inch range, heavy 1, strength 9, AP -3, damage D6 weapon. You can add 1 to the hit rolls when it's targeting something that has the fly keyword, and you can also re-roll the hit roll if you miss with this unit. That's not just against fly, that's against any unit, so that's really good. Unlike a lot of similar anti-air units, this guy doesn't suffer a -1 penalty to hit if he targets a unit that doesn't have the fly keyword. He's just better at hitting against fly units, and even if he targets a ground unit, with that re-roll to hit, he'll be hitting 8 out of every 9 times. So it's an incredibly reliable long-range las cannon, essentially. The thing that really surprises me so much about this guy, though, is that his toughness of 8 and 11 wounds for 75 points is one of the best defensive profiles point for point in most of 40k. There are very few anti-tank weapons that can kill this guy efficiently, just because of the number of toughness 8 wounds it has at very, very cheap points. You could have 3 of these for 225 points, and that's 33 toughness 8 wounds that the opponent has to remove. If you compare that to, say, Erepulsor Executioner, which is 320 points and only has 16 toughness 8 wounds, then you can see that these guys are crazily more durable than that unit. Though admittedly they do have lower damage output with just those 3 Sky Spear missile launchers. The Hunter has a couple of options that you can choose to take. You can add on a Stormbolter for 2 points, which I think frankly you should, because it allows it to have some small threat against light infantry that get too close. And 2 points really isn't that much to pay for 4 strength 4 shots every time the opponent gets in 24 inches of it. You can also take a Hunter Killer missile, which will set you back 6 points. I think that this is one that you could either take or leave depending on your points you have available and how the rest of your list is going to be built. I'd certainly think about it a lot more if you're using the Master Artisan's trait to allow it to re-roll to hit and potentially to wound. If you're thinking about playing in the Devastator Doctrine, so the missile will be AP -3, and if you're thinking of running some buffing characters near the Hunter to make the damage output better. Nothing wrong with taking it, but nothing wrong with leaving it off either. If I was taking Master Artisans though, then it would be an auto-include for me. The model has a few special rules, including Angels of Death, which gives it access to combat doctrines, so being in the Devastator Doctrine will make that Sky Spear rocket launcher AP -4, so it should be ploughing through most tanks' armour. Like all vehicles, it has the potential to explode on the roll of a 6, dealing D3 mortal wounds to every unit within 6 inches of it, and it has smoke launchers that allow you to forego shooting to have enemy units have -1 to hit the hunter. I wouldn't usually bother with this because it's quite defensible as it is. So now we've taken a look at its stats and rules, let's see how we can soup it up to the max when we field it on the battlefield. As with all vehicles, Iron Hands is amazing for the hunter, due to 6-up feel no pain, degrading slower and better overwatch. If you have their super doctrine, you can move and shoot it with no penalty, which is very helpful too, and they have a lot of stratagems and special rules which can help improve vehicles. Ultramarines isn't a bad pick for a hunter, as when you're in the tactical doctrine it will be able to move and shoot to full effect, plus being able to drop back out of combat is very nice for a ground-based tank and still be able to fire. Raven Guard or using the stealthy successor chapter trait is great, as it will give this model a 2-up save every time your opponent is outside 12 inches of it, and that really helps to compound its durability to make it very, very nasty to shift. And Salamanders or Master Artisans is certainly useful as well, as it will let you reroll that all-important wound roll on the Sky Spear missile pod, and it also makes using a Hunter Killer missile an auto-include, as you'll have a high chance of re-rolling its hit or wound roll. The Hunter doesn't really need much character support, as it already has full re-rolls on its primary weapon, so no real point in buying a Captain or Chapter Master for it. A Lieutenant isn't that bad to allow you to re-roll wound rolls of 1, but bear in mind that these are only 75-point models, so you're not exactly buffing loads and loads of shooting by making sure a Lieutenant is right next to it. You might be better off elsewhere. To my mind, the main stratagem to think about using on this unit is the Fire Stratagem, which is a 1 CP stratagem and lets you add +1 to the hit and wound roll against a target that can fly. Also, if you happen to roll a 6, that's an unmodified 6, then the damage inflicted by that shot is doubled, which could be hilarious because you could theoretically do 12 damage to a single flyer with just the one shot from that Sky Spear missile launcher. While this is very cool, I typically wouldn't use it on a hunter, as on average it gets you around about an extra 1.5 wounds against a standard flyer that's -1 to hit, and that's quite swingy as well. You still have a reasonable likelihood of doing nothing, but you do have a very small chance of doing a horrendous amount of wounds if you should roll that 6 to wound. I think this strat is better used on the Stalker, which we'll be getting onto tomorrow. So how would I personally field this unit to get the most out of it? If I was building a detachment to optimise the use of hunters, I would probably choose a successor chapter with the Stealthy and Master Artisans traits to give it a 2-up save from a long way away, and also to let you re-roll the wound roll on that big Sky Spear missile. I'd give it a Hunter Killer missile and a Storm Bolter, and ideally I'd want to field it as an Iron Hands successor to allow it to move and shoot for no penalty. I'd also be very happy just to run it as normal Iron Hands, as they also give it a very nice durability buff and they don't degrade as fast. In a typical game, you'd want this unit to be as far back in your deployment zone as possible, screened out from charging enemy units that might want to come close to it and tie it up so it can't fire anymore. There's no real reason it needs to be close, as its missile has such a long range. If you're running a tank gun line, I'd certainly think about using prepared positions to get this guy a 2-up cover save on your first turn, and I'd aim to try and shoot down enemy heavy targets, and particularly flyers or anything with the fly keyword with that Sky Spear missile. As a completely different take, as the unit is so cheap, it's only 75 points for such a good defensive profile. In the right matchup, you could use this as a screening unit in itself. You could have 3 hunters deployed at the front of your army to stop enemy units from getting too close to the rest of your actual good units. You could consider using smoke launchers to further increase their durability, and basically encourage your opponents to try and plough through that really, really good defensive profile. If they're sat at the back, the opponent will most likely just ignore them and focus on your more dangerous things. So this could be a good way of forcing him to chew through a load of Toughness 8 wounds on tanks that aren't actually all that killing. You'd have to be careful with this strategy though, because you wouldn't want to do it against anything that could charge round you and wrap you completely in close combat and stop you from falling back. So overall, my impression of the Hunter is that it's a very competitive unit in the new Space Marine Codex. It's just ridiculously tough from its points cost, with a decent, reliable damage output that might not be quite as good as some of the other star units in the Codex, but because they're so tough, they're likely to be getting that damage output the whole game long. I would certainly consider these when I'm playing a competitive Space Marine list. They're a very easy and cheap way to add some quality anti-air firepower and anti-armor firepower to any Space Marine list, and it can be for such a cheap cost as 225 points for 33 Toughness 8 wounds. Just mental. Check back tomorrow in Tank Week for our second review, which will be the Space Marine Stalker, another hidden gem that has come out of the new Codex. Please correct me if I've got anything wrong or I've missed any crafty tricks that we could get out of this beast of a unit, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you would like to see more of these reviews. I'll see you guys in the next video.